The drama surrounding the Indiana Fever's playoff push was never meant to be written this way. No franchise envisions a season where 5 core players vanish to injury, where the one superstar meant to usher in a new era of basketball is ripped away just as momentum begins to build. And yet somehow, that's exactly what unfolded in Indianapolis. The storyline that should have been a tragedy instead became one of the most remarkable survival tales in recent WNBA history. And at the heart of it, standing tall not only in the paint but in the locker room, was Aliyah Boston, calm, unflinching, and unwilling to mince words about who this Fever team really was. For Boston, this was only her 3rd season, but she already carried herself with the authority of a seasoned veteran. When asked if she was becoming spicy on the court, she smirked, almost amused at the description. "I like spicy," she said before quickly brushing it off. No, she wasn't spicy, she insisted. She was focused. She was dominant. She was everything her team needed her to be. And in that defiance, of labels, of expectations, of doubt, Aliyah Boston revealed the secret ingredient behind Indiana's unlikely playoff run. The win that sealed it, a 94-65 blowout over the Washington Mystics, was less about basketball and more about statement. It wasn't just another victory in the standings, it was the Fever punching back at a league that had already written them off. A playoff berth was supposed to be out of reach without Caitlin Clark, the golden child of the franchise and the sport's brightest young star. But on this night, in a game that mattered more than most, Indiana proved that heart, resilience, and unshakable belief can outweigh talent on paper. To understand how improbable this moment was, you have to rewind to the beginning. The 2025 Fever weren't just hit with adversity, they were gutted. Clark, averaging more than 16 points per game, was supposed to lead this roster into the postseason spotlight. Then came the gut punch, a torn groin just 13 games in. It was as if the oxygen had been sucked out of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The fans, the analysts, even rival teams all saw the same thing, the Fever's playoff hopes crashing to the floor alongside their star guard. But it didn't stop there. Sophie Cunningham went down with a knee injury. Chloe B. Bai, another knee. Sydney Coulson sidelined. Ari McDonald, done with a foot injury. By midsummer, half the rotation was gone. Most teams would crumble under that weight. But Indiana didn't. What emerged instead was a kind of grim determination, a next woman up mantra that stopped being cliche and started being survival. By season's end, 18 different players had suited up in Fever uniforms. Think about that for a second. Nearly 2 full rosters churned through one season. Odyssey Sims arrived midstream. Shea Petty stepped into meaningful minutes. Aerial Powers carved out a role. It wasn't neat, it wasn't planned, but it worked. Coach Stephanie White refused to panic. She simplified rotations, demanded toughness, and drilled her team into leaning on one another. She didn't pretend everything was fine. Instead, she told them to embrace the grind, to let their pain become their fuel. And slowly, impossibly, it started to work. By the time Indiana traveled to Washington, the Fever had already begun rewriting their story. What looked like despair in June transformed into resilience by August. Players who might once have been role fillers suddenly carried responsibility. And in the nation's capital, with the playoffs on the line, all of that belief came pouring. Out in the form of dominance, the Mystics never knew what hit them. For 2 quarters, the game looked competitive, even tense. Washington kept things tight, trading blows with Indiana. But then came the 3rd quarter, a frame that will be remembered as the 10 minutes where the Fever officially announced themselves. The defense suffocated Washington, holding them to just 9 points. Passing lanes vanished. Every shot contested, every drive turned back. On the other end, Indiana found its rhythm. Fast breaks, paint touches, kickouts for threes. The Fever turned the floor into their playground. And once they seized control, they never let go. Natasha Howard was the hammer, pounding Washington inside for 17 points and refusing to give them any breathing room. Aerial Powers came off the bench like a spark plug, dropping 15 points with energy that electrified her teammates. Shea Petty, nearly perfect from the field, added 13 points of her own. Lexi Hull dove for loose balls and created chaos on defense, while Kelsey Mitchell, even on an off-shooting night, steadied the backcourt with 10 points and leadership. By the final buzzer, 5 Fever players had scored in double figures. That kind of balance is rare in this league. For Indiana, it was survival by committee, and survival that looked a lot like domination. But at the core of it all was Boston. 12 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Another double-double, her 17th of the year, breaking the franchise record and pushing her career total to 41 in just 2 seasons. The numbers spoke volumes, but the presence meant more. When Boston was on the floor, the Fever weren't, just better. They were whole. Her defense anchored them. Her rebounding gave them second chances. Her passing opened opportunities her teammates desperately needed. And her voice in the locker room afterward tied it all together. Asked how the Fever never lost faith despite so many setbacks, Boston was blunt. You never doubt yourself and what you're capable of. Simple, unpolished, and powerful. It was the mantra her team needed, and one that fans quickly echoed online. After all, hadn't they just witnessed proof? Every possession against Washington was a testament to that mindset. Lexi Hull crashing to the floor for a rebound, Ariel, Powers refusing to quit on a broken play, Sims threading passes through impossible windows. They weren't playing like a team clinging to survival. They were playing like a team that believed fully and deeply that they belonged. The locker room after the win was joyous, but grounded. Players laughed, hugged, celebrated. Someone joked about not making a TikTok. But Boston, ever the steadying voice, reminded them that while this was a moment to enjoy, the work wasn't finished. There was another game on Tuesday and then the playoffs. It was the perfect balance. Celebrate the small victories, but never lose sight of the bigger mission. That's leadership. That's culture. And that's why Boston has become more than a star center. She's the heartbeat of this Fever team. If Caitlin Clark is the lightning rod, the spark that draws eyes, Boston is the foundation holding the house together. Without her, this season would have unraveled. With her, it turned into a proving ground that hardened Indiana into something more dangerous than they were before. Consider the irony. What if the very injuries that seemed to doom Indiana actually gave them their greatest gift? Without Clark, without Cunningham, without McDonald, other players were forced into the fire. They had to grow, to expand their roles, to stop waiting for someone else to carry them. Now, when Clark returns in 2026, she won't be walking into a team reliant on her every move. She'll be stepping into a locker room that has learned how to win without her, a group with championship DNA already seeded into its culture. That's the real twist of this story. Indiana wasn't supposed to be here, not with 18 players rotating through, not with their superstar watching in street clothes, not with analysts calling their season over in June, and yet here they are. Back-to-back playoff appearances for the first time since 2015 and 2016. A winning record for the first time in nearly a decade, and a roster that looks less fragile and more dangerous than it ever has before. The road ahead is brutal. Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, all heavyweights, and the best-of-3 format means the Fever will spend most of the series on the road. On paper, this is not a favorable draw. But hasn't that been the story all year? On paper, they shouldn't have been here at all. On paper, they should have collapsed when Clark went down. On paper, the Mystics should have had a fighting chance. And yet, when the games were played, Indiana turned paper into ashes. This is bigger than one playoff berth. This is the dawn of a new chapter for Indiana basketball. It's the proof that the foundation is solid, that the culture is real, that the future is brighter than the setbacks of the present. Aliyah Boston's words will echo long after this season ends. Never doubt yourself and what you're capable of. For the Fever, it's not just a mantra, it's who they are now. So as they prepare to step into the postseason, battered but unbroken, the rest of the league has to ask themselves, if Indiana can look this dangerous at half strength, what happens? When they're whole again? The answer might terrify them. And now, the question turns to you. Do you believe the Indiana Fever are building something that could reshape the WNBA in the years ahead? Is this the beginning of a dynasty in disguise, or simply a miracle run fueled by circumstance? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're fired up for the playoffs, comment Fever Playoffs right now. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Because trust me, this ride is only just beginning.